shows this weekend. It's kind of a bummer there wasn't more people because I know that we've been like working really hard at like advertising a lot better. And
I mean, the summer I think just is tough, especially when the summer first kicks off because, I mean, especially in the Midwest when the winters are so tough, people really savor the time to be outside because they know it's short-lived.
Sure.
So I think just like when that summer really kicks in, which it does seem like, because I was in Chicago last week and like, I was on at least one show. I think that they were just like, that we didn't sell any tickets. Like, and it was because the city did feel like it was just like buzzing. Like we were walking around and people were like, you could just feel that energy of people being outside. And they really, June hit. It's like, it's summertime. We're living life. We're enjoying it. So I think, it's tough. It's tough to get people inside. The shows, some of them are starting when it's still light out. Like, it's just like, it's hard to draw people like, come on into a dark room and be quiet when like
Right.
you just want to be out and chilling and stuff. So that's tough. But I really had a lot of fun. I really loved that apartment show. Like, that to me is like, I was talking to, I don't know if it was you or I don't know who, one of you three producers. I was kind of out of my mind, tired last night at the end of the show. But I was saying how like, it's so like, like you have like a comedy club and people go there. They know they've bought tickets to a comedy show. It's not an ambush show. It's not, there's like this expectation, like I'm buying a ticket so I can see people who are funny make me laugh. Like it's like the transaction is very, and in some ways, sometimes like especially when you do like a show like last night in an apartment show where it's this weird venue, kind of a weird odd assortment of people, you almost lose some of that like looseness and like freshness that I find kind of the most intoxicating about live comedy.
Sure.
In a comedy club, because it does feel a little more, like you're not like at like Hilarities, let's say, like you're not super close to the audience. It's a big room. You're above them. There was money involved. I mean, they paid for tickets last night, but it's like there's just the informality of these kind of like weird DIY shows. Like that's where generally I feel like you have. It's almost like a different type of fun doing comedy. Like there is a crazy exhilaration when you are doing well for a room of 300 people. Like that is a hard feeling to beat, but you don't. When you're like in front of 12 people in this weird apartment, like I was just doing whatever I thought in the moment was funny. And that is, as a performer, you get that like kind of high of just like, let's just see where this goes.
Yeah.
Whereas like, you're doing 25 at a club. It's like, you don't want to do bad. So you got to remember the bits. And like, I don't want to say it's two types of comedy, but there's just different feelings that you get. And they're both fun in their own way, but it is fun to do some of those shows where you're just like, let's just fucking let it rip. And like, if you fuck up a line, these people are not like, whoa, like this guy's eating it all. Like it's very forgiving in a way because everybody kind of, you can clown on the people and like, you're like, look at you, neck tattoo. And like, it doesn't feel mean. It just feels like we're all kind of in this weird room together. Like, let's just make it an experience, So I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. I love doing that apartment because for those particular reasons. And it's like, I don't know, sometimes it goes hand in hand of like, we have to sometimes convince them like, oh, we are funny people. Like, we're not just here because we're
it's
just
free
like,
hobo space or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So that sometimes gets involved with it. It's like, oh, because when you're in a club, there's like, oh, there's already an expectation. Like they know you're a comedian. Like it seems like almost, oh, you're an established comedian because you're working in an establishment.
Right. Even if they've never heard of you, they're just like, well, you're here.
Right. And I paid to see comedians.
You must be good.
A show like that, it's like, well, I came to see something.
Yeah. Yeah. There is this kind of like, the people who go to a show like that are like, they're probably into like weird stuff and they're into like the idea of like comedy is this kind of very flexy art form that and everybody did well on the show. That's the thing. Like people were getting laughs, but it's this laughter that is like, I don't know, it almost feels like more organic in a way. Like where you're just like, I'm in here making a room full of people laugh versus this kind of like, I'm a comedian, and like these are like it feels sometimes when you're in a club, not all the time, but sometimes you do feel like you're almost presenting yourself as a
Right.
you know, like here's my wares, these are
Right.
my jokes. Whereas that it just feels like right now my job is to be a funny guy, and however I do that, that's the way I'm gonna do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I could never recreate that. That's the other thing. Last night, the set I did, like I don't remember half of what I said, but I can recreate my feature set.
Right.
I pretty much know that like the back of my hand. I know like even if I do them in different order and I'm just like, all right, well I know I can get to this joke from here, and it does feel like you're really developing those patterns, and that's what you have to do if you want to put like out a special. But it is like just a different. I don't know. You just feel like kind of like a kid in a sandbox. You're like, I'm just gonna build whatever I want to build, and like there's not a lot of stakes here right now.
Right.
It's just kind of like free form, and that's when if you're getting them rolling, that's like you can't beat that high, I don't think, of doing comedy.
The cool thing too is I think that I don't know if this is unique to Cleveland, but Cleveland is definitely a music town.
Sure.
People will just go to shows, music shows, just to go to a music show.
They don't even care, the bands or whatever. They're
no
just like,
idea who's
let's
playing,
do it. Yeah.
or the style of music.
Right.
They'll just go to a venue because
Sure.
they know they put on good shows.
Yeah.
So I think for myself, Brian, and David is that we're trying to recondition people to like, no, there's this other thing you can do other than just go see a band.
Right.
So
I mean, I think that is, I don't know about obviously Cleveland specifically. I mean, you guys have a lot of shows, but it does seem like as I've gone across the country now numerous times, like in the van, you know, I've been doing van tours now. This is the third year in a row. Like I did 21, 22, and now this is like 23. So I feel like I have a pretty broad perspective, like probably more than a lot of comics besides guys who are touring clubs, but like just as like kind of an indie comic, like I've seen a lot of the country.
I would say that you have your hand more on the pulse of comedy than probably any other comic in the country, just because you've seen the ins and outs of both worlds. Like
I have,
what's going on in the indie scene on the ground level,
right,
and then what's going on in the clubs as well, because you've gotten to work with a lot of really great comics that are club comics.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the clubs. And then, but I also, when you're in a van, you got to find any show that'll have you. So you do the whatever, you do wherever you can. But and it's not like I'm like some old, like I've been doing comedy for 10 years. And so I don't have like what it was like in the 80s or 90s. But like it really does seem like comedy is becoming more and more of an accepted mainstream form of entertainment, that it's never going to rival music because music is just so much more expansive and bigger. But I think like, first of all, there's like a local scene almost anywhere you go now, which just, I don't even think, it definitely didn't exist when I started. Like, I've been in the van in all these small towns, and sometimes I'll have like a day where I'm just like, I'm like, you look at the map and you're like, well, fuck, it's like, I don't want to drive 10 hours to get to the next big place.
Right.
Because, in the middle of the country, there's a lot of gaps between like what's really out there. And you'll be like, what's here? And you'll kind of poke around on the map and be like, and you'll do some research. And you'll be like, fuck, they got an open mic. And it's like, you would have never guessed that there's like a couple guys digging it out, trying to be a scene wherever they are, but they are, and they're there and they're doing their thing. And so I've gone to a lot of places where I'm like, there's comedy here. And there's like a scene of comics who are trying to do the work like we all are. And like, they're trying to make their own shows happen, and they're trying to, follow that path. So
it's tough too, because a lot of the places where you're doing comedy, comedy was never a part of their business model.
No, not at all.
So to convince them to give you an evening and make yourself a part of their business model is a hard sell.
Yeah, for sure. So, but I do think like fans, because probably a lot of, social media and the podcast, like all the things everybody knows now, like there are just a lot of people who didn't really know about stand-up who are like, yeah, I want to go see comedy, but that weren't probably here even 5 years ago, I bet. Just people who are like, I'll take a risk on a comedy show because I've seen these reels, whatever. It's probably as simple as that. I watch TikTok, and once in a while a comedian will come up, and I like comedy now. So maybe that just clicks a little idea in there. Even I talked to a couple people last night at the restaurant show we did.
Oh, in Rocky River.
And
the Rocky River Tap and Social.
Yeah, so when we were doing that, and that's, that was a very different crowd than the apartment show. That was much more middle-aged, money, good job, probably nicer houses. But a couple people, they were talking to me after, and I was like, how, I always kind of like to ask, like, how did you hear about this? And they're like, oh, we wanted to do something tonight, and we looked up like events, and they see comedy, and they're like, I don't think any of these people knew who like Mike was, but they were just like, but we wanted to try comedy night. Like, I think those 4 people in the front, I talked to the 2 wives of those couples, and they were like, yeah, we were in town just tonight. We wanted to do something with our friends. We looked up events, and we found this comedy show. And I was like, cool. And I don't know how many shows they've seen, but they were like willing to take a risk and be like, yeah, let's go buy tickets to this comedy show at this local restaurant.
Yeah, that'll be fun. At least, the very least, they'll get a good meal.
Yeah, and they enjoyed it. They had a good time. They bought shirts for me, and so that was cool.
The one thing I will say, and I'm glad David sold me on doing shows more of like pop-up style, or like, we call ourselves like a remote comedy club.
Yeah.
I'm glad he sold me on doing that, because there's so many people that we have, like, how many people I would say at least once a week in a comic asks how many people have come to a comedy show before.
Right.
And or like, how many people here, like, this is their first time going to a comedy show, and hands go up.
Sure. No, it's becoming it's just like people are, and I think with social media, it's refining it. Like, I have my beefs with the way comedy is kind of presented now, and like, there's a lot of stuff with the internet and comedy that I think are weird, but I will say that it is like a lot of the complaints of comedians kind of pre-Instagram were that a person would show up to a comedy show, clearly the type of comedian was not for them. Like, they didn't want to see blue, or they didn't want to see dark, or it was mostly that, like, some people might go to a clean comedy show and not like it, but they're not going to be like offended. But that was a big complaint, is like, there was no real genre of comedy. There was no like, if you're into fucking folk, you don't want to go to a metal show.
Right.
But all of a sudden you're getting the equivalent of like a metal comedian, and you're like, dude, I didn't want this. It was like, well, you can do any research, but now there's literally zero excuse for a person to ever kind of be at a comedy show, unless it is truly like, even local showcase comics in a local scene all have something of their material online that you can just be like, oh, these are the names I want to check, because I don't want to be challenged or offended. I just want to go, and you can find every comedian on that show and be like, nope, I don't want to hear jokes like this, and just not go. Sure. And that's slowly turning comedy into not necessarily genres, but people will, like, you're gonna more and more people be like, oh, I like this style, I like metal, I like folk, and you'll start to find those comics.
Things like Don't Tell, Comedians You Should Know, Dry Bar. That's why those things exist, so you can kind of like gauge the kind of comedian they're willing to book, especially with Dry Bar, because Dry Bar, they keep it as clean as possible. You can talk about sex to a point, but it's, no, it's, and that's great. Like, there was, I think when Dry Bar first came out, people were kind of shitting on it, but it's like, this is exactly what we want, because we want these people because I don't want those people at my show. Right.
I don't want them mad at me immediately because I'm talking about fucking pedophiles or whatever I want to talk about. Like, please, like, know what you want, know at least kind of the area of comedy you want or you're comfortable with, and then find that. And I have friends who've done Dry Bar, and they're great comics. The overlap in what we talk about is not, there's not a lot of similarities in that Venn diagram, but at least it's like, cool, they can entertain those types of people, and I can do this. And like, there's so many people, you just have to find the right folks who like you, or at least like your style. And like, even festivals now, like, like the biggest one is like the Legion of Skank, Skank Fest has a whole fest, and like, their fans know what type of comics they want, and they're gonna go, and they're gonna get those type of comics. They're there for a specific style of comedy, and that's cool, and that's what they want. And a dry bar person would be mortified if they bought a ticket to Skankfest. And it's good that both camps can exist.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, there's no reason that everybody needs to like everything.
No, and like it does. Like, the hard part is that sometimes I think people's expectations of what comedy is very like the spectrum is just swung so wildly because some people just see, oh, I see these clips online and this person's just talking to the crowd.
Yeah, the crowd work stuff is big and like,
and I get why we do it that way.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't want to burn material,
right?
So you put up the crowd work shit because you know that's never going to happen again.
Right.
And it was a funny moment.
Sure.
So, you know, and you're not burning, you're getting yourself out there and you're creating content without burning any material.
Yeah.
So there's a strategy to it. And I get that. But I think a lot of people's expectation of what comedy is that they think that they're coming to be told that their jobs are dumb.
Yeah. I mean, that probably, I imagine it's weird now because I feel like a lot of people only release crowd work clips because they don't want to burn the act or whatever, and that's fine. But it is kind of weird because like, I don't know, like I love doing crowd work. I find it very fun. It's in the moment. I've done a whole crowd work hour before. You know, I have it on my YouTube. So like that was like the first kind of like special I ever released was like the crowd work hour, and that was cool. It was also advertised as that though. I wasn't surprising anybody when I did the show. It was like all the tickets were like, you're gonna get talked to. This is the whole show. Is this? Right. No one was like, what the fuck? I thought I was gonna hear jokes. Like the whole thing was advertised as like. But like it is weird because comedians for so long have complained about hecklers, and I feel like these crowd work videos are now kind of. These fans are like, well, they like it because they'll get a clip out of it.
Yeah, I'm helping. That's their attitude, is that I'm helping.
But they actually kind of in a way are helping truly because it's like, oh, that got 1 million views because some guy was like, you know, whatever.
Somebody got a beer thrown at them.
And that made a whole career.
Yeah.
You know?
No, great. That's fine.
Like, but it is just like all these comics for years have been like, don't talk. I just want to do my act. And now it's like, you know, no, actually, it would be amazing if you did it because I just need to go viral.
Right.
You know, but there's a whole fucking discussion.
Yeah.
About that shit,
that's,
you know?
Yeah.
So whatever, But
I guess that's a good launching off point to get into the podcast. Welcome to Not Weird, Just Homeschooled with your host, Jeremy Demery. I'm good. I'm here with my good buddy here, Jake Silberman.
Hell yeah.
We met... 2021?
Yeah, when I had the first van tour, when I was doing that documentary and I was in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I met you I think we met initially at Hilarities. You were hanging out at the bar, I feel like. Because I have a picture of you, me, and Jimmy Graham that we sent to Curtis Cook. Because I was roommates with Curtis in Portland.
Wow, really?
I was roommates with, I lived with Curtis and his now wife, actually, Brandon. I forget the years now, 2016, 2017 maybe. It was like the final year before he eventually moved to LA.
Wow.
But yeah, so I lived with Curtis, and I was like, do you guys know Curtis? Like I knew he was a Cleveland guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, everybody was drunk. And I just took a picture, and I remember I sent it to Curtis, and yeah, it was you, me, and Jimmy. And I think that was the night I met you, because you were just hanging at Hilarities at the bar. It was like a Sunday night, and then I met you the next night. I remember we did John's show at that grog shop.
That is, yeah.
Because that's in the dock, I remember. That's where and then we left. It was just 2 nights in, yeah. So I met you there.
Yeah, I was probably there because I was doing the crowd work show.
Oh,
yeah. On a Sunday night.
Yeah, probably. Good. Yeah, so then we did the grog shop the next night, and then, yeah, we've just kind of kept in touch. And then I saw you in New York a few months ago.
Yeah.
I ran into you in New York.
Yeah, I try to go to New York as often as I can.
Yeah.
I got that advice from Jeff Ross about how, like, you know, because I live so close in Cleveland, you live so close to New York. It's like, try to go to New York as often as you can, especially when you feel like you've got strong material.
Yeah.
Because you can work on your shit in Cleveland and not be seen.
Yeah, and
then go be a strong comic in Cleveland or in New York. And, you know, 2 things might happen. You know, eventually you'll probably end up moving there. And 2, like, you're going to be around stronger comics.
Sure. Yeah.
Who will make you a stronger comic.
Yep.
And then you're more than likely to get in front of somebody who might actually be able to help your fucking career out.
Totally. Yeah. No,
So
I think that's good advice.
It was phenomenal. It was the best comedy advice I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I met Curtis Cook. We all love him. He's so funny.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, what a small world. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was the initial kind of connection point I remember. Because I think I saw that photo. It came up in my memories not too long ago. I was like, oh shit, yeah. Everybody was kind of torqued out, but yeah, it was funny. But yeah, so
was I still drinking then? I don't know. I couldn't.
Maybe you weren't, but I just remembered that bar was kind of people were taking shots, and I think it was with Jeff Dye, and so I know he bought shots for everybody. It was just kind of a whole
Yeah, I was
thing.
not drinking. I was the one who was doing all the driving.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's where you met.
Because I think I quit drinking probably 6-7 months before that.
Okay, that's probably smart. It was still pandemic times.
Yeah. And I was a bad drunk.
Oh, well, that's good.
Drunk.
We don't need any more bad drunks in this world, dude.
Cleveland has too many to begin with.
Yeah,
so.
The whole Midwest does. It's a bad drunk area of the country.
So where did you grow up?
I'm from Minneapolis. Yeah, I was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I went through high school there, and my parents still live there. My brother still lives there.
How many siblings do you have?
Just one, just a younger brother who's 2.5 years younger than me. And he lives there. Some of my closest friends still live there. So Minneapolis is kind of a town. It's I don't know if you've ever been, but
yeah, I've been a couple times.
It's a really it is a very nice city. And so a lot of people, and I'm sure this is true everywhere, it's I think it's weird. I think you get a skewed version of life as a comedian because people scene hop a lot. I lived in Portland, now I live in New York, so there's this idea that everybody must be moving. But Minneapolis does seem to be a city that people. It's very pleasant. My mom, born and raised there, she hasn't really lived anywhere else. It's a nice place to raise a family. So people end up sticking around. Yeah,
I have a cousin who lives out there. Trevor Dunn. It'd be insane if you knew. It would be because it's such a big city.
Yeah,
it really is. I would say it's almost like Cleveland if Cleveland were twice its size.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done a little more drive. The last time when I met you, we didn't really see hardly any of the city. We did hilarities. I remember we found a weird street to park the van on. This was when I was with the camera guy, and we didn't know anybody in Cleveland. So he just slept on the floor of my van, and I slept on the bed. It was a very kind of. And then I ended up getting hooked up with a cousin of mine that we slept at their house the second night. But so we hardly saw any of Cleveland. But I've been driving around. I feel like it gets kind of a bad rap. There's some clearly nice neighborhoods here. I feel like Cleveland's kind of the butt of a lot of jokes, but Minneapolis, I don't think has as much of that kind of rough around the edges vibe as Cleveland does. I think it really does encapsulate kind of the Midwest nice. I mean, it's called Minnesota nice. It really is that kind of people want to be polite. They want to be. It's kind of wholesome in a way. I mean, there's George Floyd happened there, so shit happens,
right?
And it's it's not a, but it does seem like the culture kind of is that nice Lutheran kind of hey, be polite to your neighbors and all that. Where I don't know if Cleveland has a different image in the nation's eye. I feel like
Cleveland's I don't know. It's weird. It's Cleveland. We have the ability to have the Midwest niceness, but we're so jaded that we have the East Coast bitterness to it. Or
you do have that kind of bleed in from both sides. I think. Yeah.
So it's a kind of a strange dynamic because and I don't know. I feel like personally Cleveland has a lot of hubris to it for how little opportunity it has to offer to anybody. We don't have a lot. We have one of everything.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
That's all you get.
Right.
You have the one thing, the one place that does that one thing, and that's it. That's all you have. So there's not a lot of if things don't work out here, I could just go to the other place. No, this is the place.
This is the place that's going to happen. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I've enjoyed my time here. But yeah. So I'm born and raised in Minneapolis. I didn't think it was like I was definitely kind of like a traveler wanderer, so I didn't kind of early on kind of knew that I didn't really want to like live in Minnesota for the rest of my life. Like I knew I wanted to get out. Like when I went to college, I went out to the West Coast. I've lived in Portland. Now I live in New York. So I'm kind of the friend in the group who like did leave and kind of got out, but it is a nice place, and like when I go back, I'm like, wow, I could. As you get older, you're like, I get it. Like it's chill here. It's easy to get around. It's clean. It's you live in New York and you're just like, damn, there's just like shit on the streets.
The bridge isn't going to collapse anymore.
It collapsed once, and it hopefully will never do that again.
Right.
Yeah. So
we had the same bridge here.
Oh, really?
The same person who designed that bridge designed one of the bridges here, that like the main one that gets you into downtown.
Yeah.
So the moment that happened,
everybody was like, fuck.
Yeah. The moment that happened, we're like, okay, well, ours needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Because it happened within the same year or two or whatever. But Minnesota is beautiful. The people there are friendly.
Yeah.
We go there maybe like once every few years, because it's like we'll fly into Minnesota, see my cousin Trevor, and then drive from Minnesota to North Dakota.
Oh, okay.
It's just, for whatever reason, it's usually cheaper and easier
to
do it that way.
I mean, if you're, I would definitely check out, make a comedy trip there. It's worth it. Like,
I'd love to.
You could do like a Thursday through a Sunday kind of thing if you planned it right, I think. And there's good comics there. It's a good scene. They got good audiences. So like, I would definitely do that. I mean, it's nice for me because I've just gotten to know the comics there just because I visit my family a few times a year. So I've started to pop into the mics when I was home, and I did I did 10,000 Laughs Festival in like 2017. So I got to know some of the producers there, and now it's kind of nice. It's like a town that like I can go headline. Like they have a couple comedian run clubs, and so I've headlined either the Comedy Corner Underground or Sisyphus every year. And
that's cool.
It's very nice, and like the audiences are cool. They come out, and like so I would definitely recommend it as like a comic just to go there and check it out.
I'm hoping that one day Cleveland will have a more independent. I guess there is one, but it seems like nobody really cares for the person who runs it, so that's kind of a shame. But it would be nice to have like an independent comedy club in Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are kind of
we're the closest the closest thing to it right
totally.
Now. I mean, I guess there's other people kind of doing similar things. I mean, there's Ramon Rivas, who's also doing like Dunlop's on Friday.
Yeah.
And he's doing a hell of a job. Like
nice.
And then there's Imposter. I guess I lied. There is one finally. There's Imposters Theater.
Okay.
That one's run by a guy named Michael Bush, who worked for Conan for a little while.
Okay.
And then after Conan kind of took the route he took, he didn't really need as many writers around as he, so Michael moved back to Cleveland. Oh. I mean, he would spend his summers here anyways, but he moved back more permanently in the last year or so, and then started Imposters Theater, which teaches people if Cleveland has any sort of like sketch, comedy, improv scene, it's predominantly due to Michael Bush, and he's doing a really great job.
That's awesome. Yeah.
What kind of did you play any sports in high school at all?
I did. Yeah, I was on the basketball team, freshman JV varsity. I ran cross country my freshman year to kind of get in shape for basketball. And then I started playing ultimate frisbee my senior year.
Really?
We had an ultimate frisbee team in Minneapolis. There was a bunch of teams in Minnesota, but our high school had one that was started by some guys. Maybe, I don't know I think it was even before I got there. So there was kind of a strong history with it. And I didn't know anything about ultimate, but I had a friend that I kind of became closer with my junior and senior year, and he and his brother played on it. And he was it was my senior, it was the spring of my senior year. It's a spring sport. So they were like, hey, basketball is done. You're a tall, athletic guy. It was very just it was the only time in my life that I've been recruited for any type of athletics. They're like, hey, dude, you're tall, you're in shape, you can jump, you can run. You should come out for ultimate. And I was like, I don't know. I've never been able to like. I'd never really been able to like throw a frisbee. And I felt like not being able to throw a frisbee is like a very frustrating skill because you just like know where you want it to go and it just like dives. And so I was like, I don't know, but they were like, just come out, and I was like, all right. And so I did, and I really liked the game. Like I liked like it's a very fast paced game. It's like a very like quick movement, and so they were basically, there was like kind of just like, just go run fast and deep and we'll get you the thing. And that was kind of it. And I was good at catching it. So yeah, I just did it. And yeah, like they like, it's big enough in Minnesota. Like Minnesota, I think was one of because I think the sport was invented at the University of Wisconsin. So it does have kind of Midwest roots. Wow. And it had enough high school teams that they had a state tournament. Like you could play in the state tournament.
That's crazy.
And so we did. My team, I think we got third. So we pretty good. And like I ended up like playing. Like I got on to like the Minnesota. Like they had like a national, like a kind of like a state national tournament that summer. Like before I went to college, and it was like you got to play for the state. So I like represented Minnesota State.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then I kept playing it in college, and eventually I played in Portland my first few years of comedy. But then comedy got big enough for me that, and like I hurt my knee, and it was just kind of the thing. But yeah, it's a weird sport because it's still kind of a joke. I feel like when you're like tell people you play Ultimate or played Ultimate, they're like, you're kind of telling them like, I don't know, like you're into like Quidditch almost.
Yeah,
like it's like, oh, that dumb weird fake thing, but like. It's gotten really popular, and it's like, I
mean, we felt the same way about lacrosse for so many years.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It also seems like a pretty popular sport in Minnesota.
It is. They had lacrosse teams. I mean, I think the lacrosse is bigger on like the East Coast, but there was a lacrosse team that like kind of all the high school kids, if you wanted to play, were on like one team across the city. But yeah, like it's just kind of like. It feels kind of like a fake sport.
Yeah.
So people are like, whatever. And it's kind of dumb and white. It's a very, dumb white sport. But it was fun. I had a lot. I got to play in a bunch of fun tournaments over the years. It's kind of a weird. It's kind of like the people who do it, I will say, this is the one thing I really hated about it was that, there's kind of that general divide between stand-up comics and improv people, and the improv people are generally very goofy and extroverted, and stand-ups are generally very like dark, wry, generally, it's not one-to-one, but more introverted, more kind of, they got a lot of problems, and the improv people are just like, life's a goofball kind of,
Right.
And man, the ultimate people were improv people. And I really did not like it. It was so hard for me to kind of get in. I don't really like, I've done improv classes. I think every stand-up should do improv.
Yeah.
I think it is a really good way to break you up a little bit and open you up and not take yourself so seriously on stage. But hanging out with those people is fucking torture. Because everything is like a game to them, and it's like, and they just are like over the top, and I'm just like, I'm a fucking grumpy guy. I just want to just be like, I'm here to run around and catch a disc and like have a few laughs, but they're just so over the top that I was just like, these people are fucking kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of anything that seems almost pandering.
It was
a laugh, and that's my That's
just
my own hang-up.
It was very extra. It was very just like, God damn, dude, can we just play the game? And like, because like a lot of these tournaments you would go to, it was very like whatever. It's like, it's not real. Like there's no real, like you can win a tournament and it's like, whatever, you won a tournament. But I'm competitive. I like when I'm playing something, I want to win. Like, and so it always felt weird, like you would win or you would like get your ass kicked, but then at the end of the tournament, they play these little games with each other, kind of like improv games. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, fuck, we just lost. Like, I don't know. I'm very much like, we just lost these people. Let's shake their hands and move on. I don't want to fucking joke around with them. Like, we just got fucking stomped out. Like, what are we doing? What are we pretending that we're all friends with these people for?
Yeah. I don't know if a good, because I don't know. I didn't really grow up with a whole lot of sports. Okay, or playing a whole lot of sports. Like when I was 12, like after 12 years old, all of your city sports go away in Cleveland.
Yeah, because then it's like
You're
either middle
supposed,
school or high school. Yeah.
So all those sports went away. So I was a skateboarder after that. So
Okay.
like being competitive as like in those, I guess, more formative years was never really a concept to me.
Yeah, I mean, I played sports from the day I can remember.
So
it was
I think even when I'm losing or have lost in life, I just don't care. Like
okay.
I'm just like, oh, that happened, and I just move forward.
On. Well, that's probably like healthy in a way to be able to kind of like just be like whatever. Like I'll get another chance,
right?
But I mean, dude, like I had a buddy of mine visit me a couple months ago in New York, and like there's a venue, Union Hall, and like they have a lot of comedy shows there. But upstairs is a big bar, and it's big enough that they have like 2 indoor bocce ball, like bocce ball, the fucking And bro, like me and my buddy were playing against each other, and like you could tell we were like trying. It wasn't just like, hey, it's like, hey, good to see you. It was like my friend who was watching us was like, bro, your like body language changed, like you. And I was like, yeah, I fucking wanted to win.
That's
like,
so funny.
And it's like so there. And I don't know if it's born into you, if it's nature nurture, but there is that part of you that's just like, I want to. And it's weird because even sometimes in stand-up, I think about it in terms like that, which I don't think is healthy. But a thing that I have to get over is like, and I think a lot of, I don't know, you could tell me if you think this way, but a lot of times on a stand-up show, if I'm going like later in the show, if I'm either going last or like second to last, let's say, and everybody in front of me has done well, I'm like, someone has to do bad.
Right.
They're all, like in my mind, they're like almost has to be a loser.
Yeah.
So I always, and then I put this prayer, I'm like, it's probably going to be me now because like, especially if you go last, you're like, fuck, everybody did well. So eventually there has to be a loser, and it's going to be me for sure. And usually it's not. Usually it's fine and you do well. But there is that like,
well, that's probably where that competitiveness comes in handy.
Right. Is like,
because you will succeed in those situations where somebody like me who are just like, I'm just going to go up and
maybe I'll bomb and like that sucks or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there is that like, and honestly, being in New York is like amped it up a little bit because like you see how good everybody is.
Sure.
And you do start to be like, sometimes there are like those sets where you're like, I'm not as funny as these people on this show. Like I'm not as experienced. My jokes aren't as good. But you almost are like, but I'm going to fucking will my way. Like I'm going to fucking just like the worst I do in stand up is I have like a very negative brain, like a lot of comics. And I've noticed, and a buddy of mine that I went on tour with a few weeks ago he was like, I see this in you a lot. It's like, there'll be a moment where like one thing doesn't work. And it's almost like this like crevasse of like, there's a little dip and you can see that I'm losing it on stage. Like you're like, oh, he's not believing in himself. And and I've tanked whole sets that way because I'm like, might not even say it out loud. I might not be like, oh, you guys didn't like that. But I'll just be like, fuck, that didn't work. And then instead of just moving on, I'll just be like, you're the worst fucking comedian. You get all that negative self-talk. And so you really do have to kind of like I have to trick myself and just be like, nope, we're not going there. We're fucking just going to barrel through. Like, you just got to make it happen right now. And like, that is kind of a sports analogy. Like Michael Jordan, LeBron had bad games. They're always going to but there's some games where it's like they had an okay game, but if they had given up, they would have had a bad game. Like there's some sets you're going to bomb. You're going to eat shit. I have
this keep going. I have this Michael Jordan quote that I look at it on occasion.
Yeah.
Because it's,
some days you're going to eat shit, but there's the guys who are like really winners in society are like, all right, on my mediocre day where I might have only scored 5, but Michael Jordan is like, fuck this, I'm going to score 15. He would do it. He would fucking find a way to be like, nope, I can feel it. I'm off today. And if I just kind of let the world make me off, I'll shoot 1 for 10. I'll get it, whatever. But no, the guys who really make shit happen, they're like, fuck that. I'm going to drive and I'm going to get fouled and I'm going to go to the line. I'm going to get my points that way, And it's just like, you kind of have to have that. I'm not comparing myself to Michael Jordan, by the way, but you do have to have that mindset of like, damn, dude, I just feel off, or this crowd isn't feeling me right now. Like, you can't just give up. The job is to make people laugh. So you got to like find any way. And like, I'm starting to just try to use that like natural competitiveness to my advantage of be like, nope, I'm not going to be the one who fucks this show up. Like, I'm not going to be the guy who just kind of sinks into himself. And this is like very recent. This is like in the last year where I've really even noticed like, damn, that's a big problem for you on stage. Is like, you'll just tank it or you'll just give up. And now I'm just trying to like, nope, grit the teeth, just get through it. We're doing this.
Or my thing is I'll turn on the audience.
Yeah, and I used to do that a lot.
I can't do that.
And that is because you're just, unless they're so bad that they know almost that they've been bad. But if they're just like, hey, we just didn't think you're almost never gonna win that scenario.
Yep.
Because they're gonna be like, it's your job to make us laugh, and we're not laughing. So you yelling at us is like, you're saying that we were right.
Right, yeah. You're not endearing us to you at all.
But I used to do that all the time. That was my go-to immediate flip out, fuck you. And then you just, I don't know, you eventually just have to fucking be like, the job is to make anybody in this room laugh. How can I get that done? And you do open yourself to then you might do crowd work. Maybe the jokes aren't working. You just talk to the crowd, or maybe you just are like, riff about the room, like something, but you have to find a way to get to the goal, which is making these people laugh. And the people who do this every night obviously get more practice, and they have more tricks, but every comic from an open micer to the guys who've been doing it 30 years know that is in some way a reality. Like, oh shit, this isn't working. I have to figure out a way to do something different now.
Yeah, I got to pivot.
Something.
Which is a skill set that I think I've learned in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
For one, being able to pivot, and then two, like I think the reason why Sam kept booking me on the crowd work show and John allowing it was because I was really bad at it.
Okay.
I was terrible at crowd work. And they like to watch me squirm.
Oh, well, there you go.
And
that's good for you too, to build those muscles.
I think they enjoyed watching me like get squirmy up there and like try and figure it out. And like eventually I did, and now I wouldn't say I'm like the best at crowd work, but I can handle myself when it comes to crowd work.
Sure.
So I'm comfortable enough to be in the moment and kind of go back and forth with somebody in the crowd. But do you feel like
I got to hear this Michael Jordan quote first?
Oh yeah. So
I got to hear MJ.
He's like, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed.
Yes.
Which is such like I don't know whose
that's
quote
a
it was.
One for him.
I love that it has numbers in it too. That's the thing I think I like most about it. But like, because I could have just as easily used the phrase like the road to success is riddled with failure. And
it is nice to have some stats behind it.
Yeah, I like the numbers part.
And Michael Jordan was crazy enough that he probably like knew that every game he played. That dude was like a fucking savage guy. So I feel like he probably was like, he used that, I imagine, to be like, fucking be like,
I admire that part of him.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think, dude, anybody who's at that level is kind of fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know what LeBron, because LeBron is kind of this very like clean cut version. Like, people talk shit about him, but like a lot of defenders, they're like, he's never cheated. He's got the same girl from high, like they're like, and he really is like, but he has to have something dark inside of him to be that good, like, because Michael Jordan kind of wore it on his sleeve. He was like a gambler, but
he was an asshole.
He was an asshole. He punched his teammates.
Yeah.
So LeBron has to somewhere. He has a room in his fucking mansion where he just goes and fucking decapitates little animals or something. Like, I don't think you can be that good without being. There has to be some part of your brain that's like, I'm almost psychotic in my will to be the best,
Or just like he's so passive that it builds up and then he takes it out.
Maybe
on the basketball court.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. I wish I had that part of me. That's why I like
you can train it though.
That's why I admire people like Michael Jordan. Like everyone says he was an asshole who just so happened to be like a successful asshole. But like, I feel like I could benefit by being an asshole a little bit more because.
Oh, dude, it's not just Michael Jordan. Like way lower, assholes get shit, man.
Right? Like,
assholes get stuff that they probably don't even deserve. I mean, every comedian looks at other comics and you'll be like, why is this guy getting these shows? And it's not maybe because he's an asshole per se, but he does have that drive to be like, well, he asked. And a lot of us are very passive. We want to always be asked. We don't ever want to feel like we're bothering anybody. But dude, you see people who are on tour or like doing shows, you're like, this guy sucks at comedy. And it's like, why is he everywhere? It's like, well, he asked, he got some momentum, and then everybody else kind of was like, I guess this guy should be doing these shows. And dude, lots of careers in not just comedy go that way.
Yeah.
I mean, so many business people, you kind of like, there was those guys, you know, on Instagram being like, I wake up at 4. It's like, dude, the driving trait to all you guys is you're psychotic assholes and you think that you deserve the world. And so you go get it though. Like that is the thing. They go get it. Any romantic thing, you know, there's a girl at a bar, there's 10 guys who find her attractive, but the one guy who's going to go get her is the one who actually goes and talks to her.
Right.
She might have even liked 5 of the other guys better, but they just sat there twiddling their thumbs. And then the one guy's like, I think you're pretty or whatever. Mm-hmm. She's at least going to be like, all right, you're talking to me, you know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of guys who are just like, well, you know, I don't know.
Maybe she'll come to me. Yeah.
She won't.
She won't.
She definitely won't. So you do, I think in life, have to have a little bit of that like grit to just be like, and it sucks, dude. It's the worst thing because normal people feel, I think, the way we do, where it's just like, I don't really deserve it, or like, especially the depressed comics.
Yeah,
you know,
I revert to, you know what, they're right.
Yeah, you can't think that because it's all made up anyways, I think.
Right.
It's all like a fake fantasy world. Like, it's not a meritocracy, really. It's not like, there's no real, like, it's just like, who wants it? Who's going to get it? How are they going to get it? And, you know.
And most of the time, it's mostly like internalized. No one has said anything.
No.
No one has said anything.
And probably most
negative.
people aren't thinking that either. It's not like they're like, Gheramy fucking sucks.
Right.
No one is thinking that. It's just that they're wrapped up in their own shit.
Right. I think that people are generally, they're outwardly lazy because they're so inwardly busy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, they're freaking out about their own lives 24/7.
Sure. And I can relate to that. Like,
I mean, that's what it is to be human.
Right.
I mean, it's literally like, oh, fuck, I'm in charge of survival for this meat fucking puppet. Like,
right.
Yeah, dude, I have to make this work.
I have to make this thing live.
And you have fantasies and dreams about what you want your life to be, and those are not going to be handed to you. Like, very few people in life are just like, here's all the things you want. I mean, you have to work for it. And some people have to work harder. I mean, that's also the unfair thing about life is some people, you know, have to work much harder to get less even, like, than a guy who, you know, whatever, is born with certain advantages.
Nothing's more prevalent, I think, of that than I guess in general the entertainment arts, but like I think in comedy more so than anywhere else, because like there's some people who've been doing comedy significantly less time.
Oh, of course,
and they're much better comics than I am.
Yeah, I mean that's just some of it's God-given talent,
right?
Some of it is an early break that, you know, led to, I mean, there's a million reasons why calendar days don't equate to a career.
That's why I always tell anybody who's just starting off comedy who really wants to take it like seriously, like don't put time, like work hard as possible, like put personal goals in place, sure, but don't put timelines on them. Or like strict timelines on them, because you're never going to get the things that you want on your timeline.
No. I mean, in things that you think you deserve or you should have been up for, or like, why am I not getting this look? Like that, I remember I have like I don't know exactly when it was before the pandemic, but I remember kind of making a very conscious choice. And like, whatever, we all, like, I still fail at this a lot, but I've gotten a lot better. But I really did tell myself at some point, like, look, man, you are kind of at a fork in the road. You need to either stop caring what is happening with everybody else, or you're going to fucking go crazy.
Yeah.
And I just was like, you know what? I want to keep doing comedy. I like doing it. It's something that gives me joy. I can't trip out about what it, because I was just that guy who was always not even like, just like, you know, silently just like angry and jealous. And it was just like, dude, like, you're miserable. and you're doing the thing you want to do. So what is the point of this?
Right. Yeah.
Like you're doing comedy every day, but you're fucking miserable because you're not getting what you think. And I just kind of was like, we're not going to do that anymore, man. And I got so much happier.
Yeah.
And every time I get on social media, I get unhappy, and it's because I go back in that brain of like, they got this, and why are they here? And I'll be doing a fun, dude. It's so crazy. I'll be like, get off stage, have had a great set in a place that I've wanted to perform, and then look at social media like, well, I'm not there, so fuck me. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
bro? Like. So yeah, I think
I've been trying my
that comparison
best.
game is brutal, and
I've been
it'll
trying my best to not do that anymore.
It's not worth it because you're having fun. If you're having fun, that true like the scorecard at the end of life is 0 for everybody, dude. Right. Everybody is gonna get a big fat 0 because no one makes it out alive. So like, really, I mean, it is like metaphysical, but it's like you have to enjoy it,
right?
And it does suck, and there are fucking hard days. I mean, dude, I'm living in a van right now. A couple days this week, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know? Mm-hmm. But it's all my choice. No one told me to do this.
Yeah.
No one made me go try to live out a van and do this fucking road comedy bullshit. Like, I made this choice. If I want to stop, I can. But you're doing this to yourself.
Right.
So it's weird. I mean, comics complaining all the time is like, no one is demanding you do literally any of this. You're here on your own accord. No one put a gun to your head and be like, you better be a stand-up fucking comic, or it's like, no, we're here.
Though we like to paint that picture as if we were. Like,
sure, but that's all like internal reasons to keep going. Sure. And like, I was born to do this, or like I have, and I do believe that in some way. I do believe there is an internal calling for people to do a lot of things. There's people like your brother probably early on was like, I know I want to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. That wasn't just some random thing. He had something born into him, and life happened, and he was like, I'm going to do this. So I don't think it's totally random, but we could do other things.
Yeah. He blew out his ACLs playing soccer. And that's what sparked him to become.
And he was like, I don't. Yeah. All right. There you go. Yeah. Some people were molested. They became comedians. I mean, it's tomato, but it is what it is. Like, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what we're talking about, honestly, but we're just getting philosophical, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I think what kind of, I guess to get a little bit back on track, but like, what was like your friend group growing up in high school? Were you like a part of like the jocks or?
No, it was weird. Like, so I had a lot of friends in elementary and middle school. Like, so the elementary school, almost everybody from my elementary school went to the middle school because it was directly across the field. So it was like you went to Kenny Elementary and then you went to Anthony Middle School. So I had this huge group of people I knew, like a lot of good friends, and then like just a ton of people I knew for years, like I went to preschool with some of these people even. And then in high school, Minneapolis has like 7 public high schools, and they had like the magnet programs. Like you could go to the neighborhood school that you went to if you just by address, but you could apply to go to the different ones if you were into like, they had the IB program, they had a liberal arts program. So a lot of my friends were either in the neighborhood or applied to go to this high school called Southwest. And I applied to go to South. So I went to a high school that almost none of that whole childhood group went to. So I kind of started over in high school. I had a few friends go from those early days to South, but 90% of them went to the different high school.
Wow.
And so it was weird. It was weird because a lot of the kids at South knew they were part of that group. They had known each other for a while. They went to the same middle school. So
and they're having the kids make these decisions, like
because like the liberal arts program at South was like seen as like a good college prep, and like wow. there was just
a lot of responsibility to put on a kid
and
like
the IB program was seen as like very rigorous, and I was like, I just don't know if I really want to be in that. So I went to South, and yeah, it was tough. I mean, my freshman year when I got there, I fucking sat on the floor for lunch. Like I didn't even sit at a table. Like I was just alone. Like the few friends that I knew from middle school had a different lunch period, and I didn't know anybody. So I was just like, you're a shrimpy. I hadn't had my growth spurt. I was just like this shrimpy 9th grader who didn't know anybody. South was a little rougher around the edges, and Southwest was kind of seen as like the whiter, preppier school. South was like definitely more diverse. Kids were coming from neighborhoods that weren't as nice as some of the neighborhoods that the Southwest kids came from. So I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, I just was like kind of out of my element, you know, a little bit, and just like really just like, oh. And I, you know, so yeah, my friend group in high school, I was not part of the jocks, even though I was on the basketball team. Like I wasn't, there was like a popular kids crew and I just wasn't in that. And I just was kind of an outcast. Yeah. I mean, I was just like, I had a few friends. My best friends, the two guys I would consider my best friends, neither of them went to my high school. So when I would meet up with friends, it wasn't kids from South. It was like one went to Washburn and one went to Southwest. And so that was kind of the crew for a while. And yeah, I hated high school. I was miserable all 4 years. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like being there. I didn't really ever I never really felt like I fit in. South, the building itself was this weird building that I don't know if this was ever true. I've never looked into this, but it made sense. Like it was supposedly designed by a guy who used to design prisons. So it didn't have any windows. So it was like in the Minnesota winter, you would go in, it was dark. You would come out at 3, it was dark. It was freezing. It was this like brick, like, you know, kind of cinder block building on the classrooms. The classrooms didn't have any windows on the first 2 floors. They had an addition to South on the 3rd floor, and they had windows. So it was nice. You got like sunlight during the night, like if you had Spanish class up there. But for the most of your high school days, you were in a fluorescent lit brick environment. The fucking lunchroom was this big open area, so it felt like a prison lunchroom because there was a balcony on the 2nd floor, and you could just imagine prison guards looking at you.
Wow.
It was just like not a very like, ooh, I'm here to get educated. Like I was just, and I was going through puberty, so I was depressed. You know, like it just, a lot of it was like not ideal. I never went to any dances. I didn't have any girlfriends. Like I didn't have like, you know, that's when guys are starting to get dates, and I was.
Yeah, you actually sound like you were more homeschooled in the same way like I was.
Yeah, like I was around kids, but I just felt completely isolated for the most part. And you know, it was like my mom would get me up, and I would just bitch and moan every day. I don't want to go to school. I fucking hate school. And yeah, I mean, I truly, those are probably the worst 4 years of my life. It's just being like. Because there's that still that you're starting to grow up and be like, you start to realize like this is all kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
But you're forced to be there. You're forced to be around the hierarchy that you didn't ask to be a part of. You're forced to go to these classes that you're not interested in, or the teachers don't seem to give a fuck about you. You're up at fucking whatever 8 a.m. in the cold. You know, you're waiting at the bus stop. It's fucking Minnesota cold, so it's like 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Then you go to basketball practice, and like, you know, like it's just like a weird time in your life where you're just like, all right, I have to be here. My body is changing. My brain is changing. I'm horny all the time. But like, then you see the good looking popular guys get dates, and you hear that they're fucking, and you're just like, bro, like a girl isn't even looking at me. Like it's not even like I'm not even in the game of like, oh, I went out with the girl and it didn't work out. It's like I just wasn't talking to women.
Yeah, I don't know. Those are the guys who grow up to think that every woman wants to fuck them.
A lot of those guys ended up. I'm Facebook friends with a few of them. They have very boring jobs and they got married and had kids. Like,
and
that's
they literally
fine.
think that any woman that talks to them wants
probably.
To fuck them. And it's like, dude, no, she doesn't. She was just a nice human being who had a conversation.
I have the opposite, where women who have fucked me, I'm like, I didn't really see this happen. You know, like I'm always like, I'm so surprised this happened.
Yeah, same.
I put it out like anytime I'm like, you know, you get that internal, like, I think she's flirting with you. I'm less like, she's not. There's no way she would. And yeah. Maybe, I don't know if it serves you better or worse. Like, again, those guys probably get more dates and they probably get more women in their life because they're like, I'll talk to this chick. She'll probably like me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. That's like a whole other thing. But like, I was saying high school, that was not where I was just like, what? All right, girls are not for me. I guess like girls aren't my thing, I guess, you know?
Yeah. How old were you when you had your first girlfriend or lost your virginity?
I was.
What movie were you watching?
I had like a girlfriend pretty early on, freshman year of college.
Okay.
So like it was like 18, when I had my first girlfriend, but that was short lived, and we actually didn't have sex. We just kind of hooked up, and I don't think I lost my virginity till I was like late 19 or almost 20. Like it was definitely like sex was like a weird thing for me for a while. I was just like, I just don't know if I can do this, and I was, whatever. But then it's also funny because when you're 20 or when you're in those early ages, you build it up, and now you've been fucking for almost 2 decades. You're like, yeah, sex.
It's a thing. What it is.
I mean, it's great, but it's just like it used to be the thing. You were just like, I have to have sex. I'm like,
the driving force of everything was that.
And like any party you went to, like now if I go to a party and there are women there, like I'm just like, I'm here to do my own thing. Right. I don't give a shit. I don't really talk to women, not at all. But I don't really pursue women that way. I don't really try to. If it happens, it happens. But like I've never done the dating apps. I've never
really.
I did them. I had a girlfriend in Portland for a couple years, and then those apps were becoming big. So when we broke up, I got on them for like a month. I went on 2 dates. The dates were horrible, and I just deleted them, and I've never done them since. And that was 8 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't know. I just like meeting people in real life. I don't really want it to be contrived. I don't want it to be forced. So I've just kind of removed myself from that. If it happens, it happens. I kind of just am like, if you show enough interest, then I guess we'll talk.
Right.
But if not, like I'm not probably going to go up to a gal and just be like, hey, I think you're cute or whatever. I just don't. That's just not my game.
Yeah, I was never that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I also met my wife like right before those apps were like socially acceptable again, or like because there was like there was like a stigmatism about it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird for creeps almost.
Yeah, and then
it's kind of seen as like an extension of like going on Craigslist and finding a date.
Right. Yeah,
and then like, oh, you use the internet to find women, like it's that. Yeah, and then it just became like
now it's
thing.
like that's how you meet people.
I know, but I don't know. I mean, I'm glad you obviously hear about people who make it work, but honestly, for me, it's probably I'm also like lazy, and I just remember that 1 month I had it. Like you'd get the matches, and then you would talk, and they would hardly ever go anywhere. And I was just like, God, this is a lot of work.
Yeah,
to like try to meet some. I don't know. And it's like, what are the odds that I really do end up liking this person? So I don't know.
Seems exhausting personally. Like
people do it in New York. Like in New York, it's like a religion. Like because like it's so hard to meet people, and everybody's so busy that like I mean people are working those apps, but. I don't know.
It's like how you don't. I feel like these days nobody meets anybody almost organically. It does happen through like an app or something like that, which is fine. I'm not knocking it, but like, I'm sure it's tough and exhausting. You put a lot of work into somebody, and then you guys just never meet, or
you just like clearly. It's just I guess the thing I would say about it is that you end up meeting people who. Most likely you wouldn't have ever talked to them because you might not have, or if you had talked to them at a dinner party, you would have quickly been like, there was no chemistry here.
Sure.
But you have to do all this pre-work to be like, to find out, to meet up, and then be like, oh, there is no chemistry here. And, I don't know. But, yeah. So anyways, high school sucked.
Yeah. I applaud you for actually picking a group of people that you were like associated with, because most people are like, I was friends with a little bit of everybody. I was like, and I'm like, no, you weren't. You knew like one person from like one group of people, and then you just assumed you were also inundated into that group of people.
Well, you could tell pretty clearly at my high school what group you were a part of. Like, like there was a physical location in the building on the second floor overlooking the big common lunch area. There was a part of the balcony that the cool, popular kids hung out at. And it would have been weird if I kind of saddled up there. Like, it was just like, what is Jake doing here? Like, it would have been obvious what I was trying to do.
Right.
And it was weird because I remember going into 9th grade, when you're starting to meet all these people, you're kind of trying to be friendly to everybody in a way. But quickly, by that second semester of 9th grade, you could see guys kind of making their move to like, all of a sudden they're dressing like the cool, like you were just like, oh, he picked his lane. Like he's going that's his group. He wants to be part of these guys. And you know, it's like he doesn't seem any cooler than anybody else, but he's all of a sudden like, oh, look at his clothes are nicer. He's dressed, he's doing his hair a certain way.
Right.
Like you just were like, oh, and I was like a scrubby kid. I wore the same hoodie to high school every day. I was just a fucking like, you know, whatever, garbage patch kid, I guess. I don't know. Like it was just not for me. But yeah, it was pretty clear where you belonged and where it was just like, oh, I'm not gonna fucking bother with these guys.
Yeah, I was kind of a part of the old like punk rock skateboarding kids by almost proxy because that's all I did was skateboard.
Yeah.
Like, because it's the only like physical real activity I could do, especially after 12. Like,
and like that's probably how you met kids is
skateboarding.
You
yeah,
were a homeschool kid. Like,
yeah,
that's like where you probably were able to find kids to hang out with. I imagine.
Yeah, and I was the weird kid that would just show up. Like, I would just because I was invited to something, I sometimes just show up to those things, but no one really knew how they knew me.
Yeah.
Because they didn't go to school with me. Yeah. Like I was just around one day.
You're just that weird kid.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's Jeremy. He's here. Like, okay. Yeah. So, which was kind of nice because I always stuck to the punk kids, the punk skater guys or whatever. Yeah. So that was like or like the stoners or whatever. That was kind of who I hung around. But I was able to leave if I ever felt like uncomfortable or peer pressured or anything. And I didn't have to deal with them on Monday. So fuck them. Like, I'll just leave.
Yeah.
You know, like
that's cool.
I was comfortable just being alone.
Yeah.
So
that's a good skill to have as a comic.
Being alone. I'm not very good at working with others. The fact that I can get away with it with the reason why things work between David and Brian and I is because we have our own separate things that we do.
Yeah, no, I think, I've learned doing the van thing. Like, I was always comfortable being alone, but I, like, you know, it is weird at some point where you start to get more comfortable by yourself than with people. Because I feel like there's this idea that you always, naturally, I think some people think that you should always want to be around people. But, like, I spend days in cities that I don't know anybody. Like I'll show up, do the shows, and then I'll just go back to the van, or like I spend a whole day, like I'll go to a park by myself, and like I don't even think twice of it now. I'm just like, I'm in a van, I'm alone. I hang out with comedians when I'm in towns where I know comics maybe, or I meet new comics. But beyond that, it's just like being alone is kind of like that's the default at this point, you know?
Comics are generally easy to meet because
they have a bond.
Yeah, and we're natural talkers. Like they'll just talk. You don't have. That's one thing I like about comics is that you only have to ask a few questions and they'll just go.
Yeah, and you know, there's also just it's such a weird little thing that you do that there is just a natural. It's almost kind of like. Good to see you out here, man. Like, you know, you kind of bump into them in the desert. You're like, fuck, this is crazy that we're both doing this, isn't it? Like, this is wild, man.
Yeah,
like,
for
what
sure.
are we doing, you know? I think there's that underlying statement of just like, this is fucking nuts that this is our lives. And you talk about the gigs that you've done and the other comics you know, and I mean, it's still, even though there's so many more people doing it, it's still a very small community of like the people who've been doing it for a while. You're like, oh, I know that. Or like, you know, we both know Curtis, or we both, you know, you've done these things, you've been in New York, and you know, so there's the overlap is. I mean, you could spend 4 hours with a comic and not even get to know them as a person. Just be like, isn't that gig crazy? Or like, isn't that guy a fucking psycho? Like,
right.
You just there's so much of the little world that you can explore with them and hear their opinion on that you don't even know them as like a guy that much.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments like that. There's people I've known for 5-6 years and I never knew they had siblings where they grew up. Right. So that's one benefit of this podcast. It's nice being able to get to know the people that or really get to know somebody that I've known for several years.
Yeah, totally.
So, I had one. Oh, what drew you to comedy? Like, what got you into comedy? Because it seemed like you kind of you rolled with like the more like athletic types.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely like class clown. I mean, I think some of being funny, I think, is just you meet people where you're like, oh, you're just not funny. Like, it's just like, it's kind of a personality type. So I was always like the funny dude in my friend group. And, I loved to laugh and I loved making people, I did like, I mean, me and my friends were like, basically like, especially in high school, we were just like shit talkers, that was like, we would clown on each other. We would like, the world was something that you kind of looked out onto and be like, how can we make fun of this? Like, fuck this guy. It was a lot of busting balls. It was kind of that, I don't know if, it was kind of that New York style, even though we were Minnesota kids. Like what you hear about comics back in the day was like, it was a lot of like, let's make fun of our friends and let's make fun of the world. And that's just how, and it was probably the way we kind of got through life because, we probably all weren't that happy really.
Right.
I wasn't happy in high school. I was miserable. So like for me, the only kind of power I could get was like, but I can like and some of it was mean and I had to grow out of the meanness of it. Some of it was for laughs, but a lot of it was maybe for laughs just at me and my friends, but it was like, fuck this other person. And I don't want to be that way anymore.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of growing up and you got to grow out of that shit. And it was like clearly a lot of like projection of like anger and sadness on the world that now if I have that, I can control it a bit better.
Yeah, I've had to do that a lot recently of like apologizing to people for being such an asshole to them.
I'll once in a blue moon, like if I'll go back to me. Actually, there's a comic. It was very weird, but like I was in a green room in Minneapolis. I think this past winter, and I walked in and like this other comic was like, "Hey, you two know each other," and I looked at this girl. She didn't look familiar to me. And I was like, oh, have we met like in comedy before? I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't remember you. And she was like, no, we went to high school together. And she, I guess, had started comedy, after me, obviously. And she started in DC, but lives in Minneapolis now. I was like, okay. And she told me her name and like, she was like telling me even the class. And I was like, yeah, I don't really remember you. But she basically said I was like kind of an asshole to her. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. Like, that's who I was. I was just a fucking depressed kid. And like the way I interacted with people was like, I don't relate to you. I'm going to just kind of like immediately, like I'm going to put you on the defensive so I don't have to relate to you. And that's like, in a way, it's a skill building thing. It's like, it is like a comedian type of thing. Like you're always in the driver's seat, but it's not a great way to make friends.
Nope. Mine was mostly born out of insecurity of the things I was insecure about myself.
Yeah.
I'd lash out onto others about. And like, it was an immaturity. I was an asshole.
Yeah.
And, thankfully that guy is a better person than me and was willing to forgive me for all like being mean to them relentlessly.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder sometimes if I ran into these people, like what they would think or even remember. Cause I mean, a lot of it was probably generally harmless. Like we never like physically, it wasn't like we weren't like bullies. We didn't beat anybody up. We didn't get in fights. It was just a lot of like, you're either with us or against us, man. And like, we had a small little crew that was clearly against the world in that way of just like, fuck these popular kids, and it was just like.
And you guys were all in different
schools. So yeah, like we would bike around a lot and just like get in a little dumb jawing matches.
So that was probably your training ground for comedy because you're not around each other all the time. So you have all this like pent up like bits or things you're excited to tell them about. Like or things like, oh, I'll bring this up and we can riff on this for a while.
Totally. And it was just like, we just fucking like wanted to make each other laugh and like, but we just did it in kind of like an aggressive way.
Right.
But I wasn't I was not like a stand-up comedy nerd. Like I know I met obviously a ton of comics over the years who like they saw David Letterman at 8 and were like, I'm going to be a comedian. And I never had that. I mean, I started when I was almost 26. So it wasn't like late, but it's not early. I mean, when you're 4 years in and you're already 30, like you feel old kind of.
See, I didn't start until I was 30.
Okay, yeah. So we started on,
Well, I mean, I guess I dabbled a little bit, but I didn't really, I'm an idiot, and I didn't know that Cleveland even had a comedy scene. So growing up, I was born in Los Angeles, like a family in New York. So the first time I saw comedy was in New York.
Yeah.
And I honestly... in my mind, Dave Attell was on the show, but I couldn't honestly tell you as a fact that he was really on it.
Right.
But it was at the Comedy Cellar, and that was it. I went once, and then every time I went, in Cleveland, all the names on the marquees are either guys from L.A.
or New
York. So I didn't know like you could be a comedian in Cleveland, and I didn't know there was a comedy scene in Cleveland until I was older. So like, I assumed like, I have to move to if I want to do comedy, I had to have to move to New York or Los Angeles. So for the longest time, I was like, and Cleveland's a music town, so I just played in bands. I just assumed that's that was the form of entertainment. So when I found out that there was a friend of mine got in, he started doing stand up, and he was doing open mics at a place called Lakewood Village Tavern, and like he signed me up for that, and then I maybe got a chuckle at the last thing I said, maybe, but I didn't care. I was hooked.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't like a thing that I had a few like things I had watched or like albums I listened to, and like I liked it when I saw it, but it wasn't something I really sought out.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was traveling abroad, like I spent a year between Central and South America, and I remember I was like alone in this like hostel or whatever, just kind of this weird little border town between, I think it was Colombia and Ecuador, I believe, or maybe it was Ecuador, Peru, but I just somehow found like clips of Bill Burr and was like watching him, and I was just like, because there wasn't like any really tourists there. It was just a place you had to stay because the border was closed at night. So I was just like sleeping there to cross the border the next morning. So there wasn't like young people or whatever. So I was just like, all right. And I don't even know how I found him. I just was like, found these clips on YouTube. I had a little iPod Touch that they had Wi-Fi there, I guess. And I was just watching him. I was fucking just like crying, laughing. And then I started to listen to like comedian podcasts on that trip.
Like WTF or?
I started listening to Pete Holmes's. I started listening to Bill Burr's podcast, and I was more just like, wow, these guys are like interesting dudes, because that was like the early days where they would like talk about their process. Like it was just kind of, as an outsider, I was like, oh, it's cool to like hear them talk about how they make a bid or like what life on the road. Like it was just kind of like, and then I was like, maybe I want to try stand-up. Like, I don't even think I was like, I want to be a comedian. I was like, I should like try it. Especially when you're traveling, you're like very open to ideas. I was like, when I get back to the U.S., I'm going to like bucket list. I'll do a comedy open mic. And I knew I had a friend in Minneapolis. I went to college with her, and she was doing comedy in Minnesota. And I was like, hey, like when I get back, will you like show me how to do like an open mic? Will you like take me to one? She's like, sure. And she told me to like start writing down little ideas for jokes. So while I was traveling, I just had a little notebook. And so I got back and I hit her up, and she was like, all right, cool. So like come sign up at the Acme open mic, which is like the main club in Minneapolis.
Wow.
And I had, like, I didn't even know really what an open mic was. Like, I had never been to a live comedy show. I went to an open mic. The first open mic I even saw was like a week before I did one. I was visiting my aunt in Michigan, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to try comedy. And I saw there was like an open mic at the local club. Can we go? And so her and I just went to watch, and I was like, oh, all right. It's a bunch of guys that do these short little things. And so that was my first time seeing live comedy.
Wow.
And then the next week, I went down to Acme. I signed up. I got on. I was in the top like 4 comics. They give you 3 minutes. I ate shit. But yeah, I had the same thing. I was just like, holy shit, I just want to do that again.
Yeah.
Like, I immediately knew I just had that hook, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to. And I was bad. I mean, I wasn't like, and I was good. Like, I was just like, I sucked. It didn't go well. But just that rush of being there kind of got me.
Yeah.
And then I just started doing it. Like, it just kind of became the thing I did. Like, I did it for a month in Minneapolis, and I moved out to Portland, kind of unrelated to comedy. And I saw Portland had a scene, and I found their open mics, and it just was like, all right, I'm living in Portland now. I guess I'll keep doing it. And then it just was like, all right, I guess I'm doing, it just became the thing. And yeah, it wasn't like a lifelong dream, which is like kind of why I don't have weird regrets. I've met guys who are like, I wanted to do it when I was 18, but I was too scared, so I didn't start till like my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't have that. I didn't even know comedy was a thing, and I didn't even care about comedy. So to me, I started exactly when I wanted to do it. I had no, like, I guess.
That's a good outlook, because
Like, what could I have done?
I wish I would have found it when I was younger, or at least knew that I could do it in Cleveland when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that excited me the most about it, especially like I'd been in bands from like 18
bands.
to,
I wish I had been in a band. That's my big thing, is like, I wish I had done something like that, because honestly, I probably would have found a lot more community in the music and like weirdo scene than. I mean, I loved sports. I still love sports. I don't regret playing sports, but it was just like, I kind of wish I had done something different earlier. I probably would have had different friends and like a more happier time growing up than just being like, I do basketball and then I have these guys who I'm.
Yeah, I grew up around a bunch of like creative types.
Yeah, I didn't.
That was fun.
That's the other thing, is like, that really wasn't an idea for me, that you could like do a job or career that you would just be creative.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever thought of it as like, oh, this could become a career.
Yeah.
Or you can make money at any of this. It was just we were just, a lot of us were punks, skateboarders,
Right.
or like, I kind of grew up around the artsy people. Even the church I went to was a very liberal, arts centric church. Yeah. So like, all those kids were like painters or actors or musicians. And like, so that was always prevalent in my life. I didn't know it could be a career, but, yeah, I'm fortunate that I got to grow up around it, because I think it helped as I got older. But like, yeah, I was in bands that, at the time was touring quite a bit. Like I was in a band called All Dinosaurs, and we toured probably anywhere between 6 to 8 months out of the year.
Oh shit!
So
how old were you?
It was pretty much all of my 20s.
Oh wow! Okay.
Spent in that band.
What kind of like places were you, like what kind of venues were you playing, and what kind of?
We got to a point where we were doing house of blueses towards the end there.
Okay.
And I honestly was more miserable doing house of blues shows than I was doing like the punk DIY shows that we were doing earlier on. I mean, it's not as easy of a life, and the money was nowhere near what we were making at House of Blueses, but
of course,
it was a lot more fun, and it was a lot more intimate.
Yeah.
But I think that what made me excited about doing comedy was like, my first set was terrible. And like I said, I maybe got a chuckle, but I was afraid to get up on stage.
Yeah.
And that's what excited me.
Of course, yeah.
I haven't felt that since I was a kid.
Right.
To be afraid to get up on a stage.
Yeah.
That was never like a part of me. Like I was always like, I would welcome a stage or like the ability to perform anything really. Yeah. And then to be afraid to do it. Yeah. Oh man, that was exciting.
Yeah.
And it was bad. I knew it was bad, but I was excited to learn something new, and something that was also had some of the skill sets that I already had of like being a creative person.
Sure.
Like, so a new avenue of creativity was exciting to find.
Totally.
And I've never been good at painting. So like, I'm not a drawer.
No, that's, it's a weird life, but it's a fun life. I mean, it is like, cause you meet people who are like, it's good to get out of it sometimes, where somebody outside of it will tell you like, that's so cool that you do that. Cause a lot of time you're just in your own fucking headspace, but
or you're just wrapped up in the
the day to day,
the politics of it,
all of that shit that really takes the fun out of it. But but it is good to have an outside perspective on it.
That was the real drawing factors. I was like, oh, I'm terrified of this.
Yeah.
And I don't have any of those things or resources available to me anymore to make this less scary. Because there's even a couple people who say just like, oh, you're a musician. Why don't you like play a ukulele while you're up there? No one plays the ukulele. But I'm like, no, in my mind, I'm like, that's the coward's way out for me. Like, I know I can play an instrument
right.
and communicate while playing an instrument. But having that little like
it would be like a crutch.
Yeah, exactly. That fail safe is like it wouldn't have worked for me, or I would have felt cheap about it.
No, I get that. Yeah, it's the rawest form when it's just you.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you can fail at it. I think that's another.
Yeah,
music is you can fail at music, but it's
a lot harder because people.
It's a lot harder.
Well, no, I mean, music.
A lot harder to fail in music.
It's not rude to talk while the band is playing.
Right.
It's not rude. Like, the band is not demanding that you be basically silent and kind of like a stone where you just don't move and just kind of like laugh when you need to laugh. But music is
be attentive.
Yeah, music is just straight up like, kind of dance, if we're a band that is kind of cool to talk while we're playing, like, that's cool. There's just more experiences allowed at a concert than at a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were like a weird, like, we weren't punk enough to be punk, but we weren't metal enough to be metal. So we were like in this weird middle ground. So every time we played shows with metal bands, we were the weird punk band. But I liked that we did things that way because we could be a part of both scenes and it not be weird.
That's cool.
And it was fun. Like, I'm glad that we kind of didn't pigeonhole ourselves.
Yeah.
But again, like what you're saying, like being on the road and being like, and then having like, you're open to different and new experiences. Like, it kind of had the same thing where it's like, okay, like I was excited to go see people that we've been to that city before. We've met friends.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see them again and like riff on these things that we've, established as a friend earlier, or the last time I was there. Yeah. From what I could remember, it's like I was drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs during that time. But so what I could piece together,
right.
So
that's funny.
And then I still keep in touch with a lot of them. So it would be, now that I'm a comedian, that's the other thing. Like, I'm excited now that I have another excuse to come out to their city and see them again.
Yeah.
Especially in Montreal. I can't wait to get back to Montreal.
Nice.
I have friends, like, there was a band that we toured with. They were called Trigger Effect. And just the greatest group of guys, very funny people. And they all live in Montreal, so I'm excited to get back there. I might just go there, but I am been trying to like find places to hit up in Montreal and go see my friends out there. But how do you feel like your upbringing? It seems like your upbringing kind of helped you be in all these different cities or do all these different things and be comfortable in it, because even your friends growing up didn't go to your same school. So you kind of actually on a smaller level had to travel to just see them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I think some of it's born into you of like I said earlier, like there is a natural inherent, like kind of wanderlust where like I like to see different places. I like traveling. I like, moving around. I really like seeing a lot of different parts of the States. I do like, even though I'm kind of somewhat introverted, I like meeting people in weird ways. And I like kind of getting to know like a place through some of the people that I meet, and comics are a great way to do that. And audience members are like people that you meet at a restaurant while you're kind of just hanging out by yourself. Like, I like all that. And my parents are like, they're supportive. Like, I mean, I don't know how stoked they are that I like live in a van and do this, but they are the type of people who are genuinely like, it's your life. I'm not here to really tell you what to do with your life. And I have to kind of ask them a lot because I'm very worried about disappointing my family in a way. But I ask kind of like, you guys are like okay with that I'm doing this? And my mom will just be like, dude, it's your life. Like, you're in control of it. And really, like, that's freeing in a way that there is no real I mean, I had a pretty straight through childhood. Like, my childhood was, we were a middle-class family, 2 parents, 2 kids, like, lived in the city, went to public school. It was pretty early on, like, school goes from kindergarten through college. Like I knew I was going to go to college. But after that, it was just like, you're a man, you're going to do your thing. And, you know, my dad at one point, I remember him saying like,
your parents still together?
They're still together, you know, and they're happy, you know, yeah, I mean, we moved once. My first, like, up into 5th grade was in one house, and then going into 6th or 7th, we moved to another, and that's where they still live. So pretty stable in terms of, you know, where we lived and everything. But I remember my dad once, I think I was probably even doing comedy at the time. It would only have been for a few years, but we were talking. He was like, yeah, I kind of knew you weren't going to live like the straight life. Like he probably, you know, you pick up things about your kids, like, oh, he's doing all these trips, and he, you know, I went abroad by myself for a while, and I worked in Alaska for a summer, and
wow.
You know, I did the Israel trip that they offer you because you're Jewish, and like, so I've just done all this shit that I think is kind of like you're pointing to signs of like, hey, like I'm probably not gonna be like the office worker, or like, you know, I'm 36 now, like I've had serious relationships, but I've been pretty clear about like kids are probably not on the table for me. Marriage to me isn't really that important.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so they kind of get where I'm at. And I think they've never expressed like, oh, we're disappointed. I don't know if they're always like so stoked.
Right.
Because what parents probably do want their kids sleeping on the streets of Cleveland, you know?
Right.
Like, in a fucking van somewhere. But they've never been like, you shouldn't be doing this with your life. They're not those type of parents. And I feel bad because I've met comics who half the battle is just like, well, my parents don't really like talk to me because I do this, or they're disappointed in me, or like they wanted me to be, you know, like family expectations,
yeah,
maybe, whatever. Like there's all that I didn't have to deal with, and I'm like,
yeah, I don't have to really deal with that either. So
you have to not deal with it in a whole different way, though.
Yeah,
where they just don't give a fuck what you're up to. It sounds like.
Yeah, they would.
My parents, like, I talk to my parents like once a week. They know what my life is all about. They know about me, and I know about them, but they're not judgmental in that way. And you know, as you grow older, you really actually like I appreciate that more and more as I grow older, because I've met so many people who have just terrible relationships. They don't talk to their parents anymore. Something went wrong, or their parents are disappointed that they've chosen this weird lifestyle, or yada, yada, yada. So I'm very thankful that I got lucky, and like they're cool people. They're not.
That's great.
It's really freeing, you know. But
it's nice. Yeah. Like I don't think I've disappointed them in any way. I just don't.
They're just doing their own thing. Yeah, I know. That's great.
And, like even when I do bring up certain things, they're not like judgmental about it at all. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
sure.
I think they kind of, when I guess them watching me grow up, like they kind of probably assumed that I wasn't gonna. I was a very anxious kid.
Yeah.
I like to be moved around. Like I like to move. Like I have to be doing something.
Sure.
So I think they kind of saw it. Like I guess I never moved out of Cleveland permanently, but there was a long period of my life where I didn't spend a lot of time in Cleveland.
Yeah.
So I moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great that your parents were like kind of, you know, they may not be like supportive, but not like they don't put it down either, it seems like.
No, I mean, and I think I would say they are supportive. It's just like I think the general thing is just like, we're just happy that you're happy. And I think that's cool. Like,
that's great.
And that's like, really, it's like fucked up when you think about when parents aren't like that. Cause it's like, look, dude, the kid didn't even ask to be here. You made a choice to have a child. The child was born. And then you're going to like judge it for being into what it's going to be into. It's like, you know, I mean, it's the most extreme example. That's like when parents are mad that their kid is gay. It's like, well, you made the kid and the kid was born this way and now you're mad at it. I mean, what the fuck are you doing? Like, then don't have the kid if you were not up to it being kind of anything it wanted to be. Because eventually it's not your life. It's the kid's
have a puppy.
Life. Have a dog.
Yeah.
Have a dog that you can walk around and do what the dog has to do what you want to do. But yeah, once it's a kid, like it's on its own. So I'm very lucky. I'm very like, yeah.
You will find the relationship that like matches your life. Like I'm kind of in the same boat. Like when I first met my wife, like I was pretty upfront and clear from the beginning. Like if you're looking for the guy who is like looking for marriage and children, you've got the wrong person.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't have to propose at all.
Yeah.
There was no ultimatum. There was nothing like nobody was pushing me into like proposing to her.
Right.
And anyway, it just popped in my head one day that like, oh, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And it was completely up to me. If honestly, even if she would have said no, it would have not been a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Because
Crazy.
things were good.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I get it. Like why shake the boat if we don't have to?
Yeah.
So if life's good, our relationship is good, if we throw this other thing into it that puts pressure, but it didn't. It like even when after proposed, us getting married was pretty like easy going, and like she's supportive to the right amount of what I do, which I like really like. Like she's not so supportive where she's just around all the time and like demands my attention.
Yeah.
Like even like she came to our show last night and I barely had time to speak with her.
Right.
She was just there. She enjoyed the show. That's her way of supporting, which is great. Like, or I'm a busy guy. I'm always doing something. Monday through Sunday. There's something going on with me usually, and she doesn't seem to mind. And it's nice being. She also has her own life.
Yeah.
And her own, like she's a business owner, and so she has her own interests and like her own life to like. So I'm not the center of it all.
Sure.
Which is nice not to be in that position.
Of course, yeah.
So we find time. We make time for one another, and when we do find that time for one another, it's genuinely like exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
Like I'm excited to hang out with her.
Yeah,
we haven't seen each other for a few days, really.
Totally.
And like it's usually fun. Like it's like hanging out with a friend again. You know what I mean?
Right. That's awesome, man.
What's your dynamic like with your brother? You guys get along well, or?
Yeah, we're not like we're not really like call each other up kind of brothers. We text once in a while, I guess. We're different people kind of in a way. But yeah, I it's like we're not like homies really that like
my brother and I the same way.
Yeah, like we like when we're together, like we like doing shit together, like when I'm in town and whatever. But yeah, like it's not like I don't like check in with him. I'm not like, hey man, how's life? It's kind of like we see each other when I'm home, and that's like
Yeah, my brother and I are very similar in that fashion. Like also too, like I don't know, we have a limit.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, we have a limit to how much we can hang out. Otherwise, we get into fights. We argue.
I think we're that in a way.
Very different, but we want to be cordial. We want to be friendly towards one another, but we know it only goes so far.
Yeah, no, I get that. We're kind of like that too.
They text once in a while. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I had one other question about. What was your parents like? What is your parents' background in? Like, or what do they do for a living? Or
my mom was a social worker for 45 years. That's where my dad was briefly in social services. When they met, they both worked in the food stamp office.
Wow.
So they met there, but then my dad went on and he was a writer he's kind of like a financial writer. Like he worked for couple financial companies doing like their internal like marketing writing, and then he's worked for himself as like freelance financial writer for the last 20-ish years.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah,
coming from the social worker thing, they're probably just excited that you're not like a drug addict.
I guess that's true. I mean, yeah, my mom did a ton of stuff. She did food stamps. She ended up kind of helping like elderly people stay in their homes. And yeah, I mean, it's a good career. I mean, now I think I was doing some material on it this weekend, but now they both picked up like part-time jobs as Costco sample handler people. They give out samples at Costco 2 or 3 days a week at the local Costco in Minneapolis. But so that's kind of weird that they're like, my mom retired and then like I think got kind of bored with retirement and then was just like, I need something to do. So they picked up this job. But yeah, and my dad still does some writing. You know, and I think his business is definitely slowing down, so he's doing a little bit of this. But yeah, they career people. You know, worked hard. My mom, my mom had the social work job was a union job, so we had good health care through that. You know, it's like I saw the importance of like a good union early on because it was like, yeah. It got my dad and me and my brother a good health care, and it's crazy that shit isn't for everybody. But yeah, so did that, and now they're kind of I guess semi-retired in a way, living in Minnesota and doing their thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much again for doing this.
For sure, dude.
It's been nice getting to know you.
Yeah.
We met under some strange circumstances, but. And then we like seem to keep in touch. You know what I mean?
Once in a while. I mean, that's comics do that. I feel like it's just kind of like it's such a weird little world that like when I was like gonna be at Hilarities and then it dropped or whatever. I was like, well, I know Gheramy. He's in Cleveland, and I knew I had seen that you were running these shows and like. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like especially when you're doing a lot of road work, the network of people you're kind of constantly like checking in on is like pretty big. Like I have guys when I'm doing these long drives that I'll just be like, I'll just call them. I'll be like, hey man, I'm doing 5 hours today. Like let's talk. And then so it kills an hour, rather than just listening to another podcast or more music. Like you're just like, all right, I want to talk to you. I want to, and then, I like to know like, oh, you're doing like, right. When you rolled up, I was talking to a guy and he was like, I'm doing 6 hours today. And he's like going from fucking Iowa to Denver. And I was like, all right. So we talked for like 45 minutes before you showed up. And it's just good to kind of see like where people are at, what shows they're doing. It's like, it's fucking gossip too. You're like, oh, what was that show like? I was thinking about hitting that guy up. Oh, it's bullshit or the pay is good.
Yeah.
It's like, it's this kind of just weird. And I feel like I've kind of entered the ranks of like, guys who do the road a lot, especially in the van thing. Like I've just met so many guys when I'm in the van. I'm like, oh, you do all these types of shows? And I have friends now who I've only met them in person like twice, but I talk to them or I like message them a lot to like, where you at? Oh, that's cool that you're doing this, So yeah, it's a whole little community. And I think that's just for comics. That's just how we have to be. You have to check in on shit. So. But yeah, it was a great weekend. I appreciate you guys getting me up.
Yeah, no problem. It's funny too. Is like you might gossip about like shows, but it doesn't mean you're not going to do them. You just
of course you'll do them.
Yeah, you're going to do them, but it doesn't. It's nice to know like what you're getting yourself into. Of course,
yeah, and like you have different experiences with the same show. Like he was telling me about these things he did in Iowa. I was like, dude, I did that, but it was during like homecoming football weekend at the University of Iowa. So there's 200 drunk college kids who didn't give a shit about the show, and he was like, oh well, I had 8 people at one. So it's like with these gigs, like. People don't understand what these gigs really are. Like they think, oh, you're a touring comedian. It's like, dude, some of the rooms I'm doing are a testament to how much I love doing stand-up comedy.
Right.
Because so many of them they're the low pay, bad turnouts. You're sleeping on some guy's fucking stiff couch, like it's not the greatest thing all the time. So, but it is cool to meet guys like who are doing that lifestyle where they kind of really understand like, oh yeah, like this is what touring look from, because people see touring comics do these arena tours where they got a bus, they're staying in 5-star hotels, they have their trainer with them. It's like no dude, like I'm eating off food stamps when I'm in town. I'm fucking I'm trying to eat like every comic knows this. Like, oh, you get a meal, all right, I'm like not gonna eat dinner because I'm gonna get a club meal. Like it's just a whole litany of things that like the very few people in life know about. So it's nice to be able to check in with those guys and be like, how are you doing out there? Because it's as much as I like being alone, it is a weird lifestyle, and it is nice to relate to other people about it.
Or not have to like explain it away.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, sorry, I didn't, that question of like, how much money do you make? You're like, oh, dude, it's embarrassing to talk about money, but
Sure.
you have these people who are like, I get it. I get the $75 gigs. I get, it's understood, and you don't feel like you owe anybody an explanation on your life, basically.
Yeah.
Or at least your career. But your career and your life kind of bleed into each other when you're living in a fucking van doing it, Like, it's not, they're really not, they're kind of part and parcel. Like, it's the same thing. It's like, so you live in a van to do comedy, and then when you're not doing comedy, you're still living in the van. It's like, yeah, because I want to keep doing comedy.
Right.
So it's just like, yeah, it's nice to have people who are like, oh, I totally get it. Like, no one, when I talk to comics, they're like, yeah, that's good. That's a smart, like, they'll be like, that's a smart move, dude.
Right.
Like, it's a weird group of folks, but yeah, it's nice to connect. So I do a lot of that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Where can they find you on social media?
I'm on, all my handles are at the comedian Jake, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel. I think it's just Jake Silberman. I have like a full crowd work special. I actually have 2 full crowd work specials. I have a bunch of videos.
The
documentary called Back at It, where I met Gheramy doing comedy across the country after COVID. I have a bunch of these kind of like man on the street videos I used to do. And yeah, I have 2 podcasts. The Jake Silberman Show is my solo thing that I do it comes out every Friday. And then I have one with Hunter Donaldson, who's a New York comedian, called Hard Man Soft Boy. And that's like a riff improv thing that we do. And yeah, my website is thecomedianjake.com, and I post all my dates there. So I will be out on the road here and there all summer. So come out to a show.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
Thank you again for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, bud. Great. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yep.